Hi friends, Grace from the Working Hard podcast here. When you're stretching every dollar, a little goes a long way, and Walmart Business is here to help. They make it easy to order what you need, from tech and cleaning supplies to everyday essentials, all at low prices and with helpful tools like spend tracking and tax-exempt purchasing for eligible organizations. Because when your operations are smooth, your impact can be bigger. Visit business.walmart.com to get started.
The scouting report's in. Unlock the savings at Boost Mobile. Get unlimited wireless for $25 a month forever and keep your phone. It's a veteran move. Unlock the savings at boostmobile.com/unlock. $25 forever. Requires customers to remain active on Boost Mobile Unlimited Wireless Plan. For full offer details, visit boostmobile.com.
Have you ever been stuck on a weight loss plateau? Trying everything and anything you can to lose that extra weight and reach peak health? We've all been there. But Noom's unlocked the secret to reaching the mountaintop. Go in micro. The Noom GLP-1 microdose program starts at $99 and is delivered to your door in 7 days. Start your microdose GLP-1 journey today at Noom.com. That's Noom.com. Noom. Micro changes, big results. Noom GLP-1 RX program involves healthy diet, exercise, and support. Individual results may vary. Meds and personalization based on clinical need. Not reviewed by FDA for safety, efficacy, or quality. No affiliation with Novo Nordisk Inc., the only U.S. source of FDA-approved semaglutide. Not available in all 50 U.S. states.
Welcome to the Lessons from the Great Coaches podcast.
I've learned that you don't do it alone.
You learn so many different things from so many different coaches.
That's an elite learning environment.
Failure is not a problem. How you deal with it is a problem.
How to be resilient.
How important it is to infuse joy in the process of learning.
To be a good coach, you've got to give more than you take.
What an interesting life it is to be a leader.
Hello and welcome to the Great Coaches podcast, where we believe that there is no algorithm for leadership, and so we interview great sports coaches from around the world to try and find ideas to help all of us be better leaders. Today's episode is on the topic of high-functioning teams, and we are joined for the discussion with one of our past guests, the great coach Hugh who has just written a book called Championship Behaviours. Hugh led the USA men's team to an Olympic gold in 2008 and the USA women to an Olympic silver in 2012, and is presently an assistant athletics director at the University of Minnesota. Some of the key highlights of our discussion are the idea that there is a difference between high-functioning and high-performing teams, where high-functioning teams focus on actions and interactions rather than primarily achievements. That truth, compassion, and empathy are not mutually exclusive, and that high-functioning teams are trying to leverage the synergy that's created by a group of people that are working with similar goals. And just before we go to the interview, just a quick message from me to say that if you want to improve your own leadership skills, then you can reach me and another member of the team, Grant, at elevatedleadership.com.au. Our goal is to coach you towards the leader you aspire to be. And now, please enjoy our discussion with Hugh McCutcheon.
You're listening to the Lessons from the Great Coaches podcast.
Hugh McCutcheon, welcome back to the Great Coaches podcast.
There you go, the Great Coaches podcast boomerang, back again.
Hugh, we're very happy to have you back today, talking about, I think, a topic that we all of us think about a lot in life, which is high-performing teams, or as you've coined them in the book, high-functioning teams. We'll get into that in a minute. But Hugh, it wouldn't be a podcast if I didn't start with the question of where are you in the world and what have you been doing so far today?
Well, yeah, Minneapolis, Minnesota today, and it's been a very productive day. I've been quite busy. Had some really good meetings and felt like I've got some good work done. So I'm here feeling pretty good about things.
Okay, well, we've got you hopefully at the start of some momentum, which will carry us through this interview. Hugh, in the book, you talk about high-functioning teams. It wasn't a term that I'd heard before. Many people we've interviewed call them high-performing teams. So I want to start with asking you, what's the difference?
Well, to me, the idea would be high functioning is about the actions and interactions. Maybe high performing was more just the outcomes or the achievements. But I think high functioning is, to me, speaks to, how people work together versus maybe how they are in the moment of competition.
How does that look like in an elite teams like the ones you've led?
Well, I think the best teams probably understand a few different parts to teamwork. One of which is that you can't achieve anything alone. That you need your teammates, and to that end, I'd say the best athletes probably find ways to make those around them better. So nested with all in this idea of achievement that we all get hooked into as athletes, the idea that we're going to be, the best one on the team or whatever. It's balancing that. Well, maybe you can still be the best one on the team, but can you also be the best one for the team? I think those things aren't necessarily mutually exclusive. But as a coach, when you've got someone that understands the importance of a degree of selflessness around teammate behavior, and that invests in those around them, invests in the relationships, will find ways to add value to the team above and beyond whatever it is on the person on your team. We all know that teammate, and yet we seldom teach to it or even recognize it. But I think it's a really critical part of high-functioning teams, is having people that understand that we're all in it together, and therefore our teammate responsibilities, our teammate relationships are really critical to our success.
When you pull together your teams, because they change every year, you've got student athletes coming in and leaving. Yep. How do you reset, potentially even reboot this type of collaboration you're talking about?
Well, like most things, I think it starts with really clear expectations, and not just clear definitions of what are the behaviors that we want, but really trying to help people understand their meaning. I think, especially in this day and age, our athletes have more knowledge than ever, but less experience than ever. And so they might know the dictionary definition of a lot of these terms, but they don't really know how to live them. So trying to help them to understand, that whatever, hard work is easy to say, but it turns out it's really hard to do. but more importantly, that you can learn to do it. We all that's a learned behavior. It's not a unitary kind of genetic thing. So just trying to help them through that. So yeah, every year the people change. The principles driving the team don't, but their application surely does, because the people are different, the personality is different, the level of skill, emotional range and intelligence, all of those different pieces change. So your principles are the same, but the way you express them has to be different each year.
You mentioned selflessness in there, and I'm wondering, can that be taught?
I think I guess I don't know, other than to say I believe yes, especially when people understand that selflessness is connected to their own success. So in a way, selflessness can be quite selfish, not disingenuous, but to understand that if we're gonna win the championship, the trophy, the medal, whatever it is, that my ability to put team above self will actually help me to achieve the things that I want to achieve. Well, I think that's true, but that's not selfish. That's just the reality of being on a team.
There's one thing I've always wanted to ask a great coach, but strangely, I've never done it in all these interviews. And it's around the words cooperation, collaboration, and even cohesion. They get talked a lot about, often interchangeably, but I'm not sure. Do they mean the same thing is the question.
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to know without knowing the context of their use, but I would say that generally those words are expressed as synonyms, but I think there's some differences that are probably real. I mean, competition, collaboration, and cohesion. Cohesion is probably speaking more to chemistry, and competing is competing. I mean, that's a whole different endeavor. So that's the moment of whether you're good enough or you're not. This idea of collaboration, I think, is part of teams, but obviously not all sports are team sports. Even though there is a social element, and even in individual sports, whereas the opponent can be part of that equation as well. I mean, the Latin derivative of the word to compete is to strive with, not to strive against. So even if you're a 100-meter runner, having someone standing right next to you, your rival, in fact, I mean, they can pull out a performance from you that you couldn't pull out of yourself. And not to go on too much of a tangent here, but that idea of competing and having that be a learning opportunity versus having it be a defining moment is really, I think, an important part of what we're talking about here relative to the championship behaviors piece or the championship podcast, because there's been research in all this. There was a guy that did a study, he was out in New York, I think, at University of New York, and he was looking at rivalries in runners. And he studied 1,000 runners or something over 6 years. And what he found was, with runners who had their rival, however that was defined, their rival in the race, they were running an extra 5 seconds faster per kilometer than they were without their rival being there. And so when you speak about that social element to competition, I mean, that's a real thing. But even if you're just a normal Joe Blow and you're going out for a jog on the weekend and someone pulls up and says on your left and they start passing you by, well, all of a sudden you're going a bit quicker. Or if they're ahead of you and you're like, well, maybe I can catch them up. You know what I mean? So I think that collaboration piece can be expressed lots of different ways. So yeah, those words are all, maybe they get thrown in a similar bucket, but I think they're all quite different.
When I've spoken to you before, you've talked about the magic of high-functioning teams being authenticity and the ability to operate in truth. Now, the truth can sometimes hurt. And I wanted to ask you, how do you find that line between being truthful enough, but not so straight that the message doesn't land?
Well, the idea of truth combined with compassion or empathy, those aren't mutually exclusive events. So it's not truthful to be mean. It's how you frame it. Hey, we care about you. You're a good person and we like you a lot. However, you have this mechanical inefficiency. So therefore, we'd like to fix that, because like we talk about, the grass is green, the sky is blue. This is the deal. That's it. It's not personal. It just is. And we happen to live on planet Earth and the laws of physics apply. So these inefficiencies have a cumulative negative effect. But I could also be like, hey, make some comment about their person relative to this mechanical inefficiency and reduce it to somehow a personal deficiency, like somehow they're not enough because they have this inefficiency in place. So I could be mean about it, but that's not going to help anyone. It's not going to help them. It's certainly not going to help me. So yeah, I don't think operating truth and being hurtful or in any way malicious, not that I think that's where you're going with it, but I think a lot of people think that being truthful is a license to be mean. And what I think is it's just a license to be truthful. You've still got to be kind and compassionate. And with any message when we're communicating, the goal of communication is to make sure you're heard and understood. And if you personalize it, you're probably not going to get either of those.
It's fascinating because in that example you just gave, then you did start by saying, in the role play you gave, you did start by saying, we care about you, but yeah. And I think this whole idea of couching it in this whole idea of care is potentially what you're also talking about when you describe high functioning teams.
But just think about it within the context of this. As a coach, you've hopefully talked to your team about, well, what are we doing here? What's the goal? What are we trying to achieve? And let's say the team said, okay, we want to do this. Okay, whatever, win the championship. Sounds great. Okay, my job as the coach is to hold you to that standard. That's it. So it's not like I like Tom more than I like John or whatever. It's just like, hey, I'm here to meet people where they're at, but I've got to operate in truth. Otherwise, and obviously I have to be a consistent source of knowledge and information and all the rest of it. But that's my job, is to hold you to that standard. If you say you want to achieve that, then that's what we've got to do. We've got to figure out what that level looks like, what those behaviors look like, and hold you to that. That's it. It's not personal, even though it is personal in that we're investing our lives. but it's not a personal affront. How about that?
No, I like it. And when you describe leadership in that context, it's almost like, it's not servant leadership, but it's almost like, dare I say, it sounds a little bit like a service.
Yeah, well, that's exactly what I think it is. I'm not a fan of servant leadership, as I understand the concept, but it implies a power dynamic that I don't think is accurate. Service leadership, yeah, absolutely. I'm a service provider as a coach. And the service I provide is I'm going to invest completely in your development and hold you to that standard relative to the goals that we've set out to achieve. That's a service. So that makes a lot of sense to me.
Have you ever been stuck on a weight loss plateau, trying everything and anything you can to lose that extra weight and reach peak health? We've all been there, but Noom's unlocked the secret to reaching the mountaintop: go in micro. The Noom GLP-1 microdose program starts at $99 and is delivered to your door in 7 days. Start your microdose GLP-1 journey today at Noom.com. That's Noom.com. Noom. Micro changes, big results. Noom GLP-1 RX program involves healthy diet, exercise, and support. Individual results may vary. Meds and personalization based on clinical need. Not reviewed by FDA for safety, efficacy, or quality. No affiliation with Novo Nordisk Inc., the only U.S. source of FDA-approved semaglutide. Not available in all 50 U.S. states.
The longer you stay alive, the longer you can enjoy Boost Mobile's unlimited plan with a price that never goes up. So here are some tips. Do not parallel park on a cliff if you want to enjoy an unlimited plan with a price that never goes up. Do not mistake a wasp nest for a piñata if you want to enjoy an unlimited plan with a price that never goes up. Do not microwave a hard-boiled egg if you want to enjoy an unlimited plan with the price that never goes up. Stay alive and enjoy unlimited wireless for $25 a month forever with Boost Mobile. After 30 gigs, customers may experience lower speeds. Customers will pay $25 a month as long as they remain active on the Boost Mobile unlimited plan.
Hugh, I want to take it from potentially from the cerebral, but down into the feeling. You know, you've been involved with some teams that have gone on great runs. And I wanted to ask you, if it's even possible, what does it feel like when a team clicks and they go from being performing to high functioning?
I think the best way to describe it is that it feels like it makes sense or something like that. Like when it's clunky and we know we're not firing on all cylinders, and it's not like all of these campaigns are rainbows and ponies and it's all magical. It's not like that. Sometimes it's hard and it's uncomfortable and you're still finding ways to win. And to me, that's a lot about what real championship behavior is getting it done when it's difficult, because we can all be good when it's easy to be good. But I think when the team is humming, when it's all going and it's working, there's clarity around what we're doing it, how we're doing it. There's a lot of mutual respect and trust. Obviously, that's the currency that makes it all work. But there's a lot of really good stuff that goes on. And like I said, it just makes sense. It's like, oh yeah, this feels right. And so I think that's the beauty of trying to create high functioning teams, because you can't read a book about what that is. You've got to feel it. And once you've felt it, and you know what that looks like, and you've seen the actions and the interactions, well, then you can go on and you can create your own high-functioning teams because you know what that feeling is.
I have this other fascinating quote from you in the book. I'd like to read it to you if I could, actually, before I ask the question. You say, leading and building high-functioning athletes and teams is not algorithmic. The same inputs seldom lead to the same outputs year to year or even day to day, because the people and the competitive environments are constantly changing. The challenge is figuring out how to apply your guiding principles to the athletes in a way that works best for you. Now, my apologies for reading back your words to you, but it's such a great quote. But I wanted to unpack the principles element of it, actually, the last sentence. And I'm wondering if you could share a story, an idea, or something you've seen where you have had to work with a group of people to figure out how to apply guiding principles in a way that's unlocked someone else's potential.
Well, I think, even if you look at the campaign we had with the USA men, it was really challenging. And I'd say with only, probably only the last 8 months were we really a high functioning team. And maybe even the last 3 or 4 months. I mean, once we really selected the Olympic roster and we announced it early, once we were clear on who the 12 were, we announced it early. We didn't wait till the last day or whatever. And I mean, that team was pretty magical, but it wasn't like that for 4 years. For the other 3.5 years, it was clunky at times. It was difficult. Remember, that group was 10th at the World Championships in 2006. So it's not like we were locked to win anything. But to your point, when you think about applying principles, a big part of creating these teams is, first of all, making people understand that high-functioning teams are trying to leverage the synergy that's created by a group of people that are working with similar goals, similar intentions, similar values, driving the way that they're doing. That's where you're hoping to capture the extra juice to get you that competitive advantage that comes from being high-functioning. Now, within that, obviously, you've got to develop your people, because I tell our athletes all the time, a better you makes a better us. So the better they get, the better we get. So, but within that, we've also got to reconcile the fact that no one person is more important than the team's goal. So we've got to invest in personal development, but that shouldn't come at the cost or the expense of the team itself. So there are a number of examples of athletes who had to change. They had to make I'm not sure if we would say sacrifices, but certainly we'd say they had to make investments in the team that they probably weren't used to making. Some of that might be around playing time. Some of them might be about the way that they chose to compete. Some of that might be their role on the team. There are any number of things. So I guess if you're looking for an example, we can pull out a number of them. But I think the biggest thing to understand is, you take each one individually, each person, and you meet them where they're at. Understanding you as the coach probably have an idea of where they need to get to for us to become the best we can be as a team. And you try to help them on that journey. And then within that, you've got all these different parts that you're trying to develop to make sure that when they all get together, that the whole is capable of creating those synergies that come with high-functioning teams.
You speak with such passion about the topic, and I know that you're a real student of it as well. And I'm wondering, is there any research? I mean, you referenced the running research earlier, but is there anything else you've read recently on high-functioning teams that you think could help people?
No, but I'm a big proponent of this theme that we've talked about a couple of times around teams and teammate behavior. I think for me, I think a lot of stuff about teams is not formulaic, but I think there's just so many, because it's about individuals and then getting them to work to become the best they can be so that we can become the best we can be. There's probably a lot of different ways you can approach it. But I'm certainly a big believer in giving teammate behavior some framework. And I talk about this a little bit in the book when we get into some of the stuff around trust, and I talk about trust yourself, trust your teammates, trust your coaches. But within trust your teammates, I think there's a real opportunity to give teammate or whatever that role is or whatever the expectation is, to give that some clarity that I think can really help people. So I don't know if you're interested in talking more about that, but I think that's something that I think there's some value probably.
Well, let's talk about it, because in the book, you actually say you only get to be teammates for a short time, but you get to be friends for the rest of your lives.
Yeah.
This line, Hugh, between, this line transcends sports. It spills over into corporate and community life. This idea of being friendly but not a friend. It's central to your thoughts. I'd love to hear more on it.
Well, so I spent half my career coaching men's volleyball. And then, about half again coaching women's volleyball, and especially when I got into collegiate women's coaching, now you're out recruiting quite a bit, and it was quite different. One, there were more teams, more tournaments. Women's volleyball is significantly larger in scale than men's volleyball in the US, but they'd have a timeout, and all the girls would come in and they'd all put their arm around each other, or they'd hold hands or something. And I was like, well, what's that about? And so I thought, well, that's a bit strange, because that wasn't happening with the guys. And then I would see, it's not just happening on this court, it's happening on this court and this court and this court. I was like, well, what's that all about? And clearly what it was that we were trying to force our athletes into expressing some kind of unity or collaboration, cohesion, whatever it is you want to call it. But it felt so disingenuous, because every time out we've got to do this. Well, I think I only want to put my arm around someone when I want to put my arm around someone. And if I don't, well, that doesn't mean I can't be engaged in the timeout or be a good teammate or be ready to go compete. So what became clear to me was, over the years, is this ability to operate in truth is really significant. We talk about trust being the currency that makes high-functioning teams work, and part of being trustworthy is being able to be authentic, be real, right? So to that end, this idea of forced friendship, or I'll call it in the book faux friendship, didn't seem to align well. And never on high-functioning teams have I felt that when we force people to have to be friends, that somehow that got us a good outcome. So the first tenet of kind of teammate behavior is, hey, we need you to be friendly. Absolutely. Inclusive and respectful, all these other things. We have to be friendly. We have to be cool with one another, but we don't have to be friends. And I don't know about you, Paul, but, I think when you think about the number of really good, solid to the bone friends that you have, if you have a handful in your life, then you're doing pretty well. So the idea that every year we'd have, 15 on the volleyball team, or 50 on the football team in American high school football or whatever, I mean, that seems unlikely. So that's what I meant. Teammate is a real responsibility. Friendship, well, that can evolve, but it turns out that if we're not faking our friendship, then maybe we actually give real friendship a chance, because we're operating in truth. So what I also found was that idea of friendly, not friends. It's not that we're opposed to friendship or we're not trying to be friends. We just don't want to feel like you're forced to do that. Well, all of a sudden, giving people the freedom to develop empathy and understanding, free of the expectation that we needed to be friends at the end of it, was really important for these connections that we talk about to develop. It allowed people to operate in truth, develop empathy, to be better teammates, because we took that whole deal off the table. Now, don't get me wrong, a lot of people on those teams ended up being friends, but we just didn't require it.
I read some research recently into making friends and why it's more difficult as you get older, and it basically said that you need to be vulnerable and have unstructured time together. Now, I'm not suggesting that your practices are unstructured, but I imagine there is a lot of unstructured time around the practice, the traveling to games, the after game. And I think this lends itself to creating friendships. But I love this idea that you have. It's very freeing, I think, for any manager, let alone whether you're leading big teams, but if you're just managing people, to be able to say, you can be friendly, but you don't need to be people's friends. I think it's quite a strong idea, and I think it transcends sport and moves into society.
I would agree. I think it's a similar. Now, I'm not saying that anyone's at fault in this, but I do think people's expectations around teams are, again, going back to this idea that we're families or we're friends, that they're social groups. But the primary responsibility is this professional context. And then, from that, they might develop these other social structures around that. But that shouldn't be the primary driver of our relationships.
Hugh, as always, it's wonderful to spend half an hour talking to you about all things leadership and elite sport. So thank you so much again for your time today. I just think this is the third or fourth time. Hopefully we can get you back for another time. You can delve into leadership or one of the other behaviours that you talk about quite deeply in the book.
Yeah, no, it's truly a pleasure. I love it. And as always, thanks for having me.
Hi, everyone. You have been listening to the great coach, Hugh McCutcheon, talk about high-functioning teams. If you enjoyed it, we highly recommend Hugh's book, Championship Behaviours. It's the fourth time now we've interviewed Hugh, and every time I learn something new. And just before we go, if you have any feedback, then please let us know. Just like Cody Royal, who after listening to our James Kerr interview said, "This is a standout episode in an already outstanding series. Add it to your queue." Thanks, Cody. It's the interaction with the people around the world who listen that gives us great energy and keeps us going. And so if you have any feedback or comments, please take a minute to let us know. And if they're positive ones, why not share them with your friends as well? All the details on how you can connect with us are in the show notes or on our refreshed website, thegreatcoachespodcast.com.
Hi, this is Pablo Torre from Pablo Torre Finds Out, and today I want to talk to you about Boost Mobile, because we spend a lot of time analyzing inefficiencies in sports, overvalued contracts, money tied up in the wrong places, and so on. But those inefficiencies aren't just on a roster. Sometimes they're in your own monthly expenses. Boost Mobile says switching to their $25 unlimited forever plan can unlock up to $600 in savings a year. That's $25 a month for unlimited data, talk, and text when you bring your own phone. If that money is trapped in a pricey phone bill, it might be worth a second look. Visit boostmobile.com to learn more. After 30 gigabytes, customers may experience slower speeds. Customers pay $25 per month as long as they remain active on the Boost Mobile Unlimited plan. Savings claim based on a January 2026 Boost Mobile survey of 1,000 Americans with single-line unlimited plans, comparing average annual payments of major carriers to 12 months on the Boost Mobile Unlimited plan. For full offer details, visit boostmobile.com.